Okay, today is the 16th of August, and we are coming to the last three suttas of the Salayatana Samyutta. Sutta 35.246. Monks, if in any monk or nun, desire or lust, or hatred or delusion or aversion of mind should arise in regard to forms cognizable by the eye, such a one should rein in the mind from them thus. This path is fearful, dangerous, strewn with thorns, covered by jungle, a deviant path, an evil path, a way beset by scarcity. This is a path followed by inferior people. It is not the path followed by superior people. This is not for you. In this way, the mind should be reined in from those states regarding forms cognizable by the eye. So too regarding sounds cognizable by the ear, smells, taste, touch, and thoughts. So here the Buddha is saying that whenever the six sense objects impinge on our sense bases, if any desire or hatred or delusion should arise, or lust, hatred and delusion should arise, then we should keep the mind in check, remembering that this happening, that this mind is moved by these sense objects. Remember that this is fearful, dangerous, an evil path, a path followed by inferior people. Suppose, monks, that the barley has ripened and the watchman is negligent. If a bull fond of barley enters the barley field, he might indulge himself as much as he likes. So too, monks, the unlearned, ordinary worldling, who does not exercise restraint over the six bases for contact, indulges himself as much as he likes in the five chords of sensual pleasure. Suppose, monks, that the barley has ripened and the watchman is vigilant. If a bull fond of barley enters the barley field, the watchman would catch hold of him firmly by the muzzle. While holding him firmly by the muzzle, he would get a secure grip on the locks between his horns, and keeping him in check there, would give him a sound beating with his staff. After giving him that beating, he would drive the bull away. This might happen a second time and a third time. Thus that bull, fond of barley, whether he has gone to the village or the forest, whether he is accustomed to standing or to sitting, remembering the previous beating he got from the staff, would not enter that barley field again. So too, monks, when a monk's mind has been subdued, well subdued, regarding the six bases for contact, it then becomes inwardly steady, settled, unified, and concentrated. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is giving an example of a bull. He goes into a barley field, and then the watchman is negligent, does not notice. Because of his carelessness, the bull is able to enter the barley field and indulge and eat all that barley. It's like a person who does not exercise restraint, does not watch over the six bases of contact. So he indulges himself in pleasurable things and feels aversion for unpleasant things. But if the watchman is vigilant, he'll catch the bull and give him a sound beating. So beat him severely, then the bull run away. And if he comes a second time, beats him again. He comes a third time, beats him again. Then the bull will remember the beating and will not enter the barley field again. So in the same way, most people who are not wise to the world, not streetwise, not worldwise. Then we like to enjoy worldly pleasures. When we enjoy worldly pleasures, we get a sound beating, we suffer. We suffer, like the other day we read, either we have covetousness, when you enjoy something, you want to possess it, or when you cannot get it, then you feel grief. So these two states, unwholesome states, covetousness and grief. So when we have these unwholesome states, it's like getting a sound beating. So we suffer a few times, and then we learn a lesson. Then next time we are more careful. Then the Buddha said, when a monk's mind has been well subdued regarding the 6 bases for contact, it then becomes inwardly steady, settled, unified and concentrated. This one is if a monk practices meditation and attains the jhanas. When he attains the jhanas, the mind is subdued. Subdue what? Subdue the 5 hindrances. So when the 5 hindrances are subdued, then the mind becomes steady, settled, unified, concentrated. Then it is not easily moved by external sense objects. Suppose, monks, there was a king or a royal minister who had never before heard the sound of a lute. He might hear the sound of a lute and say, "Good man, what is making this sound so tantalizing, so lovely, so intoxicating, so entrancing, so enthralling?" He would then say to him, "Sire, it is a lute that is making this sound so tantalizing, so lovely, so intoxicating, so entrancing, so enthralling." He would reply, "Go, man, bring me that lute." They would bring him the lute and tell him, "Sire, this is that lute, the sound of which was so tantalizing, so lovely, etc." The king would say, "I've had enough with this lute, man. Bring me just that sound." The man would reply, "This lute, sire, consists of numerous components, of a great many components, and it gives off a sound when it is played upon with its numerous components. That is, independence on the parchment, sounding board, the belly, the arm, the head, the strings, the plectrum, and the appropriate effort of the musician. So it is, sire, that this lute, consisting of numerous components, of a great many components, gives off a sound when it is played upon with its numerous components." The king would split the lute into 10 or 100 pieces. Then he would reduce these to splinters. Having reduced them to splinters, he would burn them in a fire and reduce them to ashes. And he would winnow the ashes in a strong wind, or let them be carried away by the swift current of a river. Then he would say, "A poor thing indeed, sir, is this so-called lute, as well as anything else called a lute. How the multitude are utterly heedless about it, utterly taken in by it." So to monks, a monk investigates form to the extent that there is a range for form. He investigates feeling to the extent that there is a range for feeling. He investigates perception to the extent that there is a range for perception. He investigates volition to the extent that there is a range for volition. He investigates consciousness to the extent that there is a range for consciousness. As he investigates form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness, whatever notions of I and mine or I am had occurred to him before no longer occur to him. That's the end of the sutta. So here, this simile says that this king, when he heard the sound of the lute, he was so excited by it, thought it was so lovely. So he asked them to bring him the lute. So when he examined the lute, he could not find the sound. So trying to find the sound, he cut the lute into many pieces and could not find it. Then he burned it and still could not find it. So he said, "This is a useless thing." So The simile is trying to say that these five aggregates, because we derive pleasure from the body and the mind, so we think it's a very special thing. But when you start investigating the five aggregates, body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, then you find it is hollow, it is, there's nothing in there. So when you understand the real nature of the five aggregates, how they arise through conditions, how they cease through conditions and all that, then the notions of I and mine and I am that we had before will slowly vanish. So the first simile about the bull and the barley field is to tell us to keep a watch on our six sense bases, not to allow the sense objects to move our mind. And the second part is if we investigate the five aggregates thoroughly, then we'll slowly understand there is no I or mine or I am in them. The next sutta, 35.247. Monks, suppose a man with limbs wounded and festering would enter a wood of thorny reeds, and the kusa grass and the kusa thorns would prick his feet, and the reed blades would slash his limbs. Thus that man would thereby experience even more pain and displeasure. So too monks, some monk here, gone to the village or the forest, meets someone who reproaches him thus. This venerable one, acting in such a way, behaving in such a way, is a foul village thorn. Having understood him thus as a thorn, one should understand restraint and non-restraint. And how, monks, is there non-restraint? Here, having seen a form with the eye, a monk is intent upon a pleasing form and repelled by a displeasing form. He dwells without having set up mindfulness of the body with a limited mind, and he does not understand as it really is that liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. Similarly, having heard a sound with the ear, having smelled an odor, having tasted a taste, having cognized a touch, and having cognized a thought, he is intent upon a pleasing contact and repelled by a displeasing contact. He dwells without having set up mindfulness of the body with a limited mind, and he does not understand as it really is that liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, wherein those evil, unwholesome states cease without remainder. I'll stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says a man is already, his limbs are wounded and festering, and open wound, and he goes into a forest which has many thorny reeds and kusa thorns, and so the thorns prick his feet, and the reed blades, just like lalang, would cut his limbs, so that man experiences even more pain. So in the same way, the Buddha says a monk, he goes to a village, and then he meets someone who passes a nasty remark, saying that he is a village thorn. So he already has enough dukkha, and so this person passes nasty remark, he has more dukkha. Then the Buddha says, so he should understand restraint and non-restraint. Non-restraint means he is moved by